In her book titled Breaking the Grip of Postpartum Depression, Walk Toward Wellness with Real Facts, Real Stories, and Real God, published in April 2017, Judy Dipple said, "Being a new mother is supposed to be the happiest time of your life, but postpartum depression and anxiety strip that away for a time, but trust that it will not last forever." There are many women and men who experience postpartum depression. There are so many different ways to feel about becoming a parent. While diving deeper into information about postpartum depression and also living through it myself, I feel I've gained enough knowledge and have enough insight to share with you. Today, I'll discuss what postpartum depression is and its most common symptoms. I will also share with you some personal insight on how it can truly make an individual feel and ways to cope and treat postpartum depression. First, I'll discuss what postpartum depression is and some symptoms to help identify the possibility of having postpartum depression. According to AmericanPregnancy.org, postpartum depression is the second subcategory for postpartum mood disorders. Postpartum depression is not just for women. Men can experience it as well. Having a child can be overwhelming and stressful for both the mother and the father. Approximately 15% of mothers will experience the symptoms of postpartum depression. And I have a visual aid, and it says 1 in 7 women suffer from postpartum depression. Up to 50% of individuals with postpartum depression are never detected. And suicide accounts for about 20% of postpartum deaths and is the second most common cause of mortality in postpartum women. So I'll just kind of hold that up so everyone can see. The most common symptoms are fatigue, feeling sad, helpless or overwhelmed, trouble sleeping and staying asleep, feelings of guilt and worthlessness, losing interest in daily activities, and withdrawing from friends and family, and more. If you've been diagnosed with clinical depression before pregnancy, you have a higher chance of developing some form of postnatal mood disorder. Now that we've discussed what postpartum depression is and its symptoms, I'd like to give you some personal insight on what it truly feels like to have postpartum depression. I was diagnosed with clinical depression in 2011. Knowing that I had depression, I worried for myself in the future if I ever had children. In 2015, I gave birth to my first child. It was amazing. The most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced. In that first moment of holding my little boy, I was overjoyed and excited. My days in the hospital were great. I thought I would be so happy to go home, take some time away from work, and just enjoy my baby. But it wasn't at all what I had imagined. It took me over a year to truly get back to normal emotionally and mentally. In June of 2017, I discovered I was pregnant with my second child, a little girl. For the second time, I was ecstatic, but it didn't last. As time went by, I felt like an awful mother for wanting time to myself. When I couldn't get the baby to sleep and was running off of a total of maybe 10 hours of sleep in a week, I found myself begging and crying for my baby to sleep. It started to get harder and harder to get out of bed every day. It was hard to talk to people and participate in everyday life. I found myself no longer enjoying being a mother. Now that you get a sense of what a person feels like when dealing with postpartum depression, let's discuss ways to cope and treat postpartum depression. First of all, if you experience any of these symptoms, you need to speak with your doctor. Do not be afraid or ashamed to ask for help. Helpguide.org gives 4 tips to help individual coping. The number 1 tip is to make sure you create a secure attachment or bond with your baby. Tip number 2 is to lean on others for help and support. Tip 3 is encouraging you to take care of yourself. And tip 4 is to make time for your relationship with your partner. In short, these coping tips want you to know and understand the love and bond between you and your baby because that is extremely important. And you also have to make time for yourself. And not only that, but time with your partner as well. A few common medical treatments we hear about are medications, individual therapy sessions, couple or marriage counseling, and hormone counseling. The best thing you can do is continue on and don't be afraid to reach out for help and make time for yourself. As you can see by the information I have provided, postpartum depression is something that is very serious and can happen to almost anyone when becoming a parent. Today we discussed what postpartum is and its symptoms, some true insight on what it's like to have postpartum, and ways to cope and treat it. Like I said before, this doesn't just happen to women. Although it's not as common, it can happen in men as well. And there is really no right way to feel about being a parent when you go through postpartum depression. After listening to my speech today, I hope you have a better understanding of what postpartum depression is, and I hope you're able to be there for anyone you know who goes through it. Show you guys.